Sports Interactive have announced shouts are coming back to FM26, but is it too little, too late? And also, it turns out the development of FM26 in part was outsourced. That news coming from Too Fuzzy Dunlop in my Discord. We'll get to that in a second. Let's talk about shouts. Sports Interactive have put out on FM Assist, their Twitter/X account, and on the forums, this post that essentially says, "We got it wrong." It talks about how players are spending more time in matches, which they then tried to say has something to do with dynamic mode, when I really think it's that players don't want to deal with the UI, so they're just clicking through to get to the next game. But it does say the extended match duration has likely heightened the sense of passivity for some of our longer-term players, and we believe that removing shouts particularly, was a mistake. So they're bringing it back in what they're calling Content Update 1. Miles and his interviews have said that we're gonna have content updates and then minor updates. Minor updates are fixing broken things. Content update is enhancements. Think of it almost like free DLC. That content update will now not come until December 8th. They already missed the patch last week because they said that they were gonna be patching weekly. I'm not sure if that means there's no patch this week, if they just said, forget that, let's package it all together and put it out next week after we've had more time to test. And to be clear, it does call out that further information regarding the availability of Content Update 1 on the Steam public beta track will be shared later this week. I'm just not sure if that means the patch we were waiting on last week is now not coming this week, and instead they're just going to push it all together at some point later in the week, maybe on Wednesday or Thursday, because you generally try not to patch on a Friday and break everything over the weekend. Now, if you're somewhat cynical like me, you go, I don't think Sports Interactive is doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. I think they're panicking because the game is failing. And that sounds harsh, especially as a guy who's like, please come watch my Building Braveheart series. But the reality is, fewer people are playing FM26 than played FM24 in September of this year. Views have dropped across content creators, and they can see the data. That's what they're kind of sharing in that blog post. The data says people are not playing this game as much. So what they're going to do is package everything together and try and put out a really massive update next week, December 8th, which is about 2 weeks before Christmas. I wonder why they do that. And if you don't believe me, here is a SteamDB chart. I will link to it in the description below, showing FM26 in orange, FM24 in green, and FF23 in blue, showing from their launch day, that's why it says day 5, day 12, etc., because they were launched on different days. What did the player numbers peak at on Steam, which is not all players, but is a darn good indicator. And as you can see here, this past weekend, the peak, like 24-hour peak, most players playing on Steam in FM26 was just 55,000. Now granted, that is still a ton of people, because that means Sports Interactive and Sega already got paid for those copies. But when we look at the FM24 graph, what do you see here? This is the 50K line. And let's zoom in. Even back in August of 2025, 60,000 players were still playing FM24, probably in anticipation of FM26. It wasn't until Friday, September 19th, that FM24's player numbers dropped to below 55 grand, which is what FM26 has now. That is a massive drop off in the number of players in the game, and it's a true indicator that people are unhappy, and Sports Interactive can see that data. So again, this is good news, but they had announced last Wednesday on the 26th of November that there wouldn't be the weekly patch that they previously had promised because it needed more testing, and now it's been pushed back yet again so that they can combine it with this content update. Again, I think it's very important to understand, at one point Miles said there was content updates, which is like enhancements, bringing back international management, and there were minor updates, which were patches to break things. It seems like they've decided to just take those two things and smash them together to put out one big patch. As I mentioned earlier, there is a studio called The Knights of You who are claiming they helped do a lot of work on FM26. So the Knights of You assisted in delivering the co-development service, including areas such as UI and core systems implementation, among others. If you scroll down here, you can see that they've got Sega and Sports Interactive listed as the client. They're bragging about what they got done, that they worked primarily on the PC platform because they've done other work for other games, which I'll show in a second. And specifically, they helped with UI development, profiling and optimization, bug fixing, implementation of core system, and graphics programming. And I'll slide it over here so you can see they've got screenshots showing this is what we helped develop. Of course, I don't know how common this is in the industry. It does state that they started working with SI and Sega in 2024 until now. But if you had that feeling that FM26 feels like a game that was built by people that don't understand Football Manager, well, there's some evidence that might actually be true. All this does is help solidify the feeling I had way back in the beta that Sports Interactive are massively struggling with Unity. Their timelines got compressed and they had to call in outside help to help them out, which has led to the mess that this game is, where the UI seems disjointed and doesn't seem like a football manager game. Now, to be fair to the Knights of U, they may just build what SI and their designers have given them, so I'm not saying it's entirely their fault. And this is not to dog on the Knights of U. You can see they've been doing this for 9 years. They've got 90 plus people on board, so they probably bring additional people in on contracts if they need to. They have 120 projects completed, and if you scroll down here, those include Hollow Knight Silksong, which is like one of the most popular games on Steam right now. But to me, this highlights that Sports Interactive has struggled with Unity. The game is a mess, people are dropping off, and they are scrambling, which is why we're seeing, okay, let's go ahead and put this massive content update out next week. You could maybe argue that they plan to do that anyway, but I think they've realized with the announcement today with Shouts that people are dropping off, which is really bad for business. And it's not bad for the sales they've already gotten, so obviously they've gotten paid on all those copies, including mine, but they're hoping for another boost into Christmas, because if you look at the player charts, again, I'll link to them in the description below, you usually see a boost in players after Christmas. So they're trying to garner some goodwill and go, no, we've actually fixed the game. It's in a much better spot. They're going to wait for people to say that and see if they can rescue this game, because otherwise the next content update may not be until January or February, building up to the international management being added back in. But if the player numbers continue to drop and they don't get that nice little sales boost at Christmas, or maybe a smaller one, I think that puts Sports Interactive in a very difficult position moving forward. What are your thoughts about these announcements and the changes and the player numbers dropping off so significantly? Are you back playing FM24 with an updated database? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you're enjoying content like this, make sure you like and subscribe. I'll be back here when that patch gets pushed out to the beta path, although there have been some issues where the beta path came out and then the actual patch that came to the non-beta path was different than the beta path, and you had to switch back to get the full update. We'll see what it brings.